Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great week. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days and busy weeks to join us for this awesome panel today. Again, I'm with KMS Technology. For those of you that don't know, KMS is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. We are a digital engineering firm and technology consulting partner. We offer end-to-end software solutions from product engineering, QA testing, data analytics, AI-enabled solutions, and a lot more. We are excited to talk about AI today. I have an awesome panel here. Before we begin, just a couple things. Q&A, there is some time at the end for this, so please don't be scared to ask any questions. We'll try and address all the questions towards the end. If we don't have time, we'll follow up with you. Let's just go ahead and dive in. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to the gentleman for intros here while I try and figure out the polls. But, all right, Jeff, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Yelena. My name is Jeff Scott. I'm the Chief Delivery Officer with KMS Technology. Been here around 8 years, 30 plus years of experience in the industry. And I'm going to be the moderator today, and I'm really looking forward to visiting with Dilip and Tolga. So we'll pass it over to Dilip.
Thank you, Jeff. It's really good to be here. My background is, and I say in AI, I have started, founded, scaled, and exited a few different AI companies. And claim to fame is that my first AI company in 2012, when AI was the bad word, scaled very well and exited out. In addition to that, I have a portfolio of companies that I invest, mentor, coach. I'm also supporting an LP in a lot of AI funds. And delighted to be here. My whole focus is how to help businesses get disproportionate advantage of AI in their businesses and value. Pass it to Tolga.
Tolga.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Tolga Tarhan. I am like Dilip, an early AI adopter, having built companies in the space and having done a lot of work helping large enterprises adopt AI and think about how AI could change their operations and their products. Prior to the most recent AI boom, I was more in the cloud and software space, doing a lot of work with adopting AWS, being cloud native, and I was CTO at Rackspace after they acquired the business that I built over the prior decade. So excited to be here, excited to talk about AI. My current work is similar to Dilip's in that I'm helping enterprises adopt AI in real ways and applied ways today.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Excellent.
gentlemen. I'm
So
excited.
Yelena, do you want to pivot to the questions,
Yep.
or just go
I
forward?
think we're gonna just go into this. Yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll jump right in. So the pressure to innovate is huge, and we face significant headwinds in the technology space. A recent KPMG study highlights top executive and CTO concerns. 64% cited that they're concerned with ensuring their data is fit for autonomous decision making. 57% concerned about costs of expensive legacy systems and integrating with their existing infrastructure with modern AI tech stack. And 73% agree that data privacy and security are now the most important decision points when looking at generative AI and autonomous agents. Go to the next slide. Organizations today are rapidly accelerating from experimentation to piloting real AI agents. Up from 37% to 65% just in the last quarter. Deploying agents, though, has remained flat, deploying them into the production world, but we know that that's going to pivot up very quickly as soon as the pilots are complete. We also know that the executive expectations for immediate transformative ROI oftentimes clash with the foundational work that's required to make it happen. Initial agentic AI projects, similar to the Gen AI project or Gen AI enhancements that we're seeing in the past, average of 15 to 35% productivity gains in some areas, but broader impact requires a long-term strategy and an investment in an AI-ready operating model, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. Despite all these hurdles, though, the agentic AI market is poised for explosive growth. 35% annual growth is expected over the next 5 years. The focus is really shifting from general LLMs to purpose-built, reliable agents. So that's why we're here today. Go ahead and hit to the next slide. What we're going to cover. Agentic AI isn't just the next wave of tooling. It's a redefinition of how software gets made, how it operates, and even what we choose to build in the first place. This shift impacts not only engineering execution, but product strategy, customer experience, and how fast we can get our innovation muscles going. When you're leading product, whether you're leading product development, infrastructure, or data platforms, agentic AI is beginning to reshape your organization. And those who learn to harness it early will definitely have a competitive advantage. In today's session, we're going to go through these areas of focus here. We're going to cut through the hype and focus on what matters. Identifying high-value use cases, enabling human AI collaboration at the right level of autonomy, preparing your infrastructure and your data, avoiding vendor sprawl, and then addressing the various cultural, ethical, and security implications that can make or break a successful adoption. I like the way Dilip presented his mantra in terms of getting everybody, exponentially better at this. Our goal today in this whole forum is to help us move from interest into action. So let's jump in. Tolga, love to get you first with the first question. Now, we've seen organizations feel pressure to do something with AI, but no clear roadmap or alignment between business problems and agentic capabilities. In your experience, where can businesses actually apply agentic AI for the best ROI?
Thanks, Jeff. This is a good one because I think it's kind of the starting point for anybody embarking on the journey. I'll give you like a few bullet point items to think about. So the first one is you want to start with things that look like repetitive decision cycles, right? So where in the business are we, having humans make decisions, but that those decisions are relatively well understood. They can be things like, pricing related work updates, triage workflows, or onboarding customers. These tend to have lots of steps, pretty discrete. Humans are following kind of a decision matrix, even if it's in their head, to make the decisions. I think that category of use case is really interesting. Another consideration is that you should anchor to some real business pain. So it's very easy to get tied up in the hype. I often hear customers talk about what can AI do for me, or what's the most exciting thing I can do with AI. I don't find those to be the right questions to ask. I think it's what's today slowing you down? What's today costing too much money? What's affecting quality? We should be looking inward at the business and finding a pain point, and then saying, can AI fix that pain point? So you can really sort your list of business pains from most expensive to least, and just go down the list until you find one that meets the sort of achievable, cost-effective AI implementation. The next thing to consider is that you want to do things that are embedded in the business. When AI is wired in, not bolted on. So for example, I find it less compelling to add like a chat bot that, a human has to leave their core workflow, go talk to the chat bot, and then come back to their core workflow. It needs to be that AI is part of the core workflow and integrated in a way that feels natural. I once wrote an article about this in Forbes about how if your airline made you pick your seat for your flight using a chatbot, you would probably lose your mind, right? Because that's like the wrong kind of bolted on workflow. Nobody wants to chat with a chatbot. But if they used AI to maybe pick a seat you might like for you, that could be more interesting, right? So it's about embedding it in the workflow in a core way. Then the next thing, and this is I think, in the world of agile development, pretty familiar with folks, start small. So find a quick win. So filtering for all the other stuff we talked about, which of those things can we solve in 30 days? How can we build confidence in 30 days? We want it to fit into the larger operating model of the business. We want it to have a long-term vision. We want to be impacting long-term ROI. But what slice of that can we use to make the rest of the company believe in the mission, right? So some small, demonstrable, real functionality will get you budget, support, resources, and sort of overall buy-in of the organization. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to take on that 2-year project. By the way, a little side note there, that often means don't take on the use case that has a massive data problem first, because those massive data problems will take a very long time before you can deliver any value at all on the AI side. And then finally, make sure you get something into production, operationalize it. Don't just build it, but operationalize it. Start to think about the interfaces, the data, the monitoring and oversight of the AI from day one, and start building that in so you're headed towards production bound, woven into the business. So those are my, starting from how you kind of think about them to how you filter them, and hopefully at the end of that process, you end up with one or two really great low-hanging fruit to start with.
Yeah, love it. Thanks, Tolga. Dilip, you mentioned in some of our conversations as we were prepping that you've seen teams struggle to move beyond the buzzword and really identify concrete use cases. What strategies can forward-thinking leaders implement to help their teams to navigate this?
And Jeff, I think I'll start by saying, on one side, the agentic technology has such a massive value for all of us and all businesses. But on the other side, the same technology is not fully mature, right? So, and that leads to the question you asked, like, hey, how do you come up with a strategy to pick the right agents and how to go about it? And building on a couple of things that Tolga said, I think data is still very critical. To get control over your data is critical to both understand what you can execute and cost on one end, and the other side, the value that it would create. Second thing truly believe is even the data problem should be solved with a data AI agent, right? Not solved by humans. So data agents are one of the ideal use cases to get your data ready so you can use agents to solve your real business problems. And one element of strategy I would always recommend is plot every possible AI agent use case that you can think of, or you can literally go to any LLM and ask them for your business what use cases agents can solve, and then plot them internally on value on one axis and the confidence of getting the answers out. And I know, Tolga, you were referring to something similar in terms of cost and value. That portfolio approach, I think, is the ideal one. And in my mind, early wins lead to a great strategy. A great strategy which does not have wins behind it creates this believability problem. So take two of them, execute, show hard dollar value, and then the strategy is basically a roadmap on how you're going to build on one agent after other, and how do you build them in a sequence where they take advantage of each other.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you really have to be a believer in the technology to let it start leading you and building out the future and getting the data right. That's great.
And Jeff, if I can add something there, you talked about AI believer, which I always recommend all leaders to start there. But it's such a funny term because on one end, you have CEOs and business leaders who may not fully understand the jargon of AI or the depth of AI, but of course they believe that it could create value. But for them, an AI agent is nothing different than an insurance agent, right? Or a broker for your real estate. So if they can do my work for me, like why can't AI agent do the same? But for CTOs and CIOs, that's the burden. On one side, you want them to be super believer in value of AI, but other side, don't set expectation that we can have cognitive agents, which the technology is still not mature, who can actually behave like humans. They can only do tasks, very complex tasks, but not behave exactly like humans.
No, exactly. So, and even once we identify all the right use cases, and I love this, I love the approaches you guys have talked about. Another question comes up is how do we trust agentic AI, become a believer in it, to act on its own without losing control, without the hallucinations, without doing something that we don't want it to do? So, Dilip, we'll start with you. With agentic AI acting independently, leadership teams often worry, how do you balance trust in the system while maintaining necessary human oversight? Have you seen organizations that have drawn that line effectively?
Where I've seen success happen is even though agents are supposed to be autonomous and learn by themselves and do things by themselves, is when you have a very clear human governance in place for those agents. So even though you can get to 90% of what that agent is supposed to do, as you start running into both business exceptions and technology and integration exceptions, suddenly those agents start behaving or really misbehaving. So having a human govern these agents, and there are both simple techniques where you put the human in the workflow, or actually leverage other agents to govern the specific job of the agents. Both work, but I'm a big believer that you must have human agents governing AI initially. And when you're confident, of course, then you can go more towards fully autonomous agents.
Got it. Got it. So Tolga, we're seeing leadership teams, and we see leadership teams that we work with wrestling with how to maintain accountability, especially in highly regulated or high stakes environments. So building on that, how can organizations design early pilot programs to test autonomy safely before scaling broader deployments?
Yeah, so I think this is a common theme. It kind of bleeds right into what we just said about picking the right use cases, but also it's about a human in the loop approach initially. So let the AI propose something, but let a human make the final decision, right? That's a good first step. And frankly, builds trust within those teams. So if you've got a team that does onboarding and the AI is essentially proactively thinking about the next onboarding step for a customer, but a human is saying, yep, do that, send that email or provision that access or whatever, that team is now also building trust. And they're finding where the AI fails you. And so the AI is getting better. When you see that the approvals have become essentially just automatic, it's always right. That's maybe when you think about taking the human out. But initially, I think very important. Now, look, you can have the AI do a lot without the human. Just don't have it do things that can't be undone, right? So it could do a lot of planning and get something ready and do everything up to and including calling someone or sending an email. But before you take that step, have a human look at it, for example. Um, the next thing is that we got to pick kind of low risk, high value processes. So, another maybe column to add to our earlier spreadsheet of use cases we made would be the risk level. We want these repeatable tasks that have good boundaries, um, that are well understood. That again, the risk of a mistake is inconvenient, or maybe a couple of dollars, but it's not a human life. It's not life or death, right? Um, then set guardrails as well. So remember the agents, and this is I think an area of education that we have to help the executive teams, CTOs have to help their executive teams come up to speed with, is the AI itself can't do anything. It's mathematical model. So it can only do what you give it tools to do. And you're fully in control of what those tools are and what those tools can do and what kind of procedural, static, fixed limits those tools might impose. So for example, if we get to a point where we have AI in a medical device and that medical device is adjusting the flow of some fluid that's important to that patient, as long as the AI can only adjust it within boundaries that are safe anyway, right? That you've reduced the risk of that significantly. And that reduction of risk is not done by the AI. It's done by the tool that you gave it that is regular code, procedural, auditable, testable, deterministic code. And so think about the guardrails and how and where you build them. Then, you know, think about how you're going to measure the impact and the success and confidence and be able to communicate that to stakeholders. As you want to unleash the AI to do more by itself or to reduce the human monitoring, you're going to have to be able to demonstrate with real impact and real confidence measurements that the AI has been operating correctly. And then remember that you need to train the entire company around how AI is going to be embedded in the business. So we think a lot about training models. You got to think about training organizations. How do we build feedback loops in so that we can learn the AI did the wrong thing? How do we track edge cases that are being discovered as things do go wrong? And how do we build those back into our approach over time? So that requires everyone in the organization thinking about the impact of AI and how we're going to leverage and improve the AI over time.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, even with the best of intentions of getting all of these controls in place to enable, the autonomous agents to operate safely, if the underlying systems aren't ready, there still could be problems, right? So one of the biggest hurdles one of the other hurdles that we see and we saw in the CTO survey was the infrastructure and data readiness. So let's talk Tolga, about that. So a lot of companies realize that quickly their systems aren't ready for autonomous AI. In your experience, what are the biggest gaps that tend to surface first with companies when they're going down this path?
Yeah. I think we all know the first one. It's data. You don't know where your data is. It's fragmented. It's siloed. Sometimes it's an Excel spreadsheet on someone's desktop. I mean, I've seen that more times than I can recount. Um, so we don't have a clear source of truth for anything. There's like different views of the same information in different places in the organization. So which one do we hook up to? Which one do we make decisions from? Agents, as smart as they are, need access to those sources of truth, right? They're not going to be as good at like figuring out what the truth is when there isn't a single source of truth, or the hallucinate one, which is even worse. The second one is observability. So within an organization, we often don't know how decisions are made. Like the process isn't defined. And this is because humans are pretty good at operating in vague, undefined scenarios, but machines are not as good. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have um, an understanding of how the decisions are made currently. How does this process work currently? The next one, maybe more tangible, is about missing APIs, missing interfaces, missing tools, right? I talked earlier about the AI can only do what you give it tools for. And a lot of times legacy systems that we're working with don't have those hooks, right? And what you see a lot of fallback to these days is the next generation of RPA, right? So we had this RPA hype a couple of years ago. Now we have like I guess APA is what we're going to call it. But nonetheless, you essentially end up screen scraping your way through a legacy system. But it would be better if we started to build the APIs that we need to give the AI real access to information. The next couple I think are more interesting though. So those might be technical, data and sort of process oriented stuff and missing APIs. But where I have seen in my career time and time again, this happened with mobile, happened with cloud, it's happening with AI. The biggest blocker is not tech. It is internal conservatism. Oh, conservatism. Um, so basically, the organization has its own roadblocks, its own impediments that are made up. I see this a lot in regulated industries where there's a regulation that says something. There's an internal regulatory team that has interpreted that something to mean we're going to operate in this way. And when you go to challenge that and say, well, why can't we use AI or why can't we use cloud or why can't we use mobile? They say, well, because the regulation says we can't. And that's almost never the case. Regulations are not that specific. What's happened instead is the organization has absorbed a regulation, turned it into their own operating sort of policy, and they think that's the regulation now, but it's not, right? And so we need to be open-minded about how do we fulfill our legal and regulatory duties and privacy expectations, but not in the way we've always done it, right? Let's go back to the root and reevaluate what we're obligated to do, and let's think about how we might do that differently in an AI first world. I think everyone that's been in tech for the last decade saw this with cloud. The initial reaction to cloud was, we can't do that. And people will tell you to your face, that's illegal. It's like, really? And so, right, that's where we gotta be open-minded and kind of bust through internal perceptions of what we can and can't do. And we've got to reject the answer that's like, well, that's just how we do it, right? That has to be like an answer we never accept.
Well,
Uh,
if I can interject real quick, we're seeing a lot of with a lot of our clients revisiting the rules and regulations around use of generative AI tools within their SDLC, and a lot more openness to
right.
allowing vendors and consultants and their internal employees to use these tools. So yeah, I think this is a very valid point.
Yeah, it is by nature risk teams, compliance teams, risk teams, legal teams. Their nature is to say no first. So we have to
Right,
help educate them,
right.
understand what AI is, what it does, how it works, what it means for it to be probabilistic instead of deterministic, what the risks really are, and what the guardrails we're going to put in place are. But I don't think any company should be allowing those teams to say just flat out no, because that's just not where we're headed, right? Like we're headed down a path where we have to adopt this tech, so we should be talking about how to adopt it safely and
Yeah.
appropriately for our business. Not to say that those teams don't have an important input to add. They absolutely do. But the answer isn't a yes, no question. It's a how question. Um, so going back to sort of the list, right? The other things here are tech debt. There's often a lot of tech debt that's been accrued over time, and you feel like you're bolting on another layer on top of that tech debt. So that can hold back early implementations of AI. hopefully as you find your use cases, you find one that has the data solution solved, the APIs you need to act, is regulatorily and privacy and legally acceptable to your team, and there's not a lot of tech debt you're going to layer on top of. I mean, those would be great ways to again, filter your use case list, but these are realistic problems you'll end up solving as you work your way down the list of use cases.
Oh, fantastic. Uh, Dilip, when it comes to preparing data and infrastructure for agentic AI, how would you advise companies to prioritize their work early on so they don't waste time or resources in this journey?
I think, Jeff, it starts with understanding the power of AI agents in accomplishing this goal of being AI, having AI ready data for the organization. I'll start with an example first and then go back into the question. So one of the companies that I was very closely involved with in their AI transformation, they had an ERP system. They have, of course, structured, unstructured data, which we all understand. But they also had a lot of papers, Excel files, CAD data as a manufacturing company. And they were struggling even in their current ERP systems to have good gold source data. So when they started walking the path of AI agents or walking forward on their AI journey and used a unified data layer, which makes data AI ready for agents or other projects, literally that became the gold source for their ERP. I have so many examples where literally by doing getting ready for AI agents, you can actually create such a byproduct advantage for your core systems as an opportunity to leverage. I have another customer who implementing SAP realized they have much better data and they can compress their data migration structure by almost 3 months because they had taken an AI initiative. So that is a very plus byproduct of going AI. But the starting point is to realize you have structured data, unstructured data. You probably need data that you don't even have in your four walls to make AI truly work in your environments. And the best way to get this data AI ready is to use AI for it. So there are great AI agents. I just shared with you examples who can do multiple things. Clean your data, get unstructured data to structured data. It can create data synthetically where you may have gaps because certain use cases may require data you may not have ready. And we know if you don't have the data those agents need, the chances of success reduce. And of course, you deprioritize those use cases. So again, it all really starts with a AI-ready data framework, which could not only help your AI initiatives, but it could definitely help your code initiatives as well. And one thing I request all leaders to consider is that 2 years ago, even these initiatives could take 6 months, 2 years to get your data ready. In 2025, you're talking about weeks and months to get this at a place where it is usable. And I recommend everybody explore a unified data layer. And there are great solutions, both open source and otherwise out there.
Interesting. So, if we've talked about a variety of things that are impacting the infrastructure and data, a lot of focus on data. If you had to give advice to a company that may not have the um, the wherewithal or the capital to do a full overhaul of things to prepare for agentic AI, you have any practical steps that an organization can take if a full overhaul isn't practical like right now?
Yeah, I think probably nobody's doing like a full overhaul.
Yeah.
I do think there's a prioritization and kind of work your way down the list. I think Dilip called it a portfolio approach. I think that's right. I would add maybe that, don't boil the ocean here. It doesn't be perfect, right? Find that narrow, high impact task. It could even be a small task, but it's something people are spending time on today that you can automate away. Maybe do it in shadow mode for a while. Don't have it do anything except tell you what it would have done and compare those results and again, get people bought in. That reduces the risk and therefore probably reduces the burden around all the kind of compliance, legal, security, privacy concerns we talked about earlier. Um, and then really from there, add another column to that spreadsheet we talked about around readiness. Which use cases can we actually take on right now? Which ones can we easily design around? Which ones are really problematic today? And then finally, as these things as these things actually result in success, make sure you document those wins because the way you're going to get from kind of slow progress on the first two use cases to the budget and resources you need to go adopt AI more broadly is by demonstrating real ROI. It is tech demos are not enough. Make sure you start demonstrating real ROI.
And one hack there to consider, Jeff and Tolga, is I'll give the example of finance function, right? So one of the companies that I was deeply involved with, uh, the finance function is ripe for AI use cases and AI agents. Yes. And if you have your buy-in from your finance leaders and your CFOs of AI, things become generally much easier. They are the ones who need a lot more convincing, compliance and finance. So you could start on one side with a use case which allows you to do billing using agents.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, you can go to the next level and do a three-way match using AI agents, right? And remember, you still have human governance, so you're not going to actually create significant business impact as you learn. And to Tolga's point, you can even do this in shadow mode to prove to yourself the great efficiency and value these could create. But I've seen companies go from, all right, I'm going to do billing with agents to I'm going to do three-way match with agents to I'm going to leverage sequence of agents to go from closing my books in 2 weeks to 2 days. And this is not a theoretical example. This is a company based in Cleveland who is actually on their path to doing something great like this. So again, there are so many real examples. So this is a low-hanging fruit. The other low-hanging fruit in my mind, if you're just trying to become a believer in AI and AI agents, is your indirect procurement, right? So if you're manufacturing or services, right? Well, we allow AI agents to drive our cars. We're talking about do surgery on human beings. Certainly, we can trust AI agents to buy nuts and bolts and toilet paper, right? So these are low-hanging fruit where you can see hard dollar value as examples, and I've seen these being very successful starting points.
And always a good idea to get the finance team on board.
Certainly, yes,
Exactly.
yes, yeah. Because
No,
they go from, hey, I don't know what you guys are doing. It sounds like a hobby project, right? Like I need to
just
budget for
the
to,
real
oh, I saw
ROI.
hard dollar savings. Like, why are you not doing more of it?
Yeah,
And that transformation is beautiful from a tech side to see.
I've seen that. I've seen that here too. So those are all great suggestions. And we all know as technologists that the tech's sometimes challenging, but it's not necessarily the hardest part of some of this. And we talked earlier, Olga, I think you mentioned this too. It's the people shift that there can be a lot of resistance to change and getting buy-in from the finance team. That's one example of how you kind of do the organizational change. But for both of you, for companies that are just getting started with agentic AI, what's one way to introduce it without overwhelming the organization? And are there strategies to build buy-in, which we talked a little bit about already, but when teams are already really stretched thin?
Yeah, I think most of the fatigue, resistance, et cetera, around this particular change comes from a personal, is my job at risk kind of feeling that people get. I think, because if you think about it, if you peel that concern away, AI generally is going to make your job easier. And so unlike, a lot of the prior changes that we saw in tech, I think this one's actually benefits everyday workers if they aren't worried about their job. But the reality is they are worried about their job. And so there's, I think, a four kind of things we should do to help here. One is that we should frame AI as a co-pilot. Right? That's a word you're seeing obviously Microsoft and GitHub use specifically, but more generally, the job of the AI isn't to replace people, it's to make people more efficient. It's to take away the worst work. It's to remove tedious and repetitive and low value tasks and let you work on higher value. Look, this kind of transition has happened a bunch of times, right? When cars came out, people were like, well, but what about all the people that drive horse buggies? What will happen to their jobs? Well, it worked out, right? It's a similar situation here. It could be a tough transition, but the real way to think about this is that an AI powered human is going to be replacing the job of a non AI powered human, not that the AI is going to replace the job of the human. And I think it's important to get that framing right for folks. Then, second item is to start with things that are empowering to people. So, not just efficient, but things people don't like to do, the work that is painful, the work they wish they didn't have to do. So, you can deploy AI against those areas you're actually going to make people happier. You're going to reduce burnout. You're going to improve people's jobs, and you're going to get the resulting efficiency gains still as a side effect. And so thinking about pain points is really interesting. The next third one, I've said this, I think, in every question so far, is to make sure you pick something visible. Make sure that you can celebrate the thing that was done so that everyone else in the org can take a breath and go, oh, we brought some automation and it made finance better and it didn't cost a bunch of jobs. Um, and then finally, make sure the teams that you're building the bot, agent, et cetera, for are actually part of the process and then designing it, how it should work, what it should do. Their buy-in is important both to get the technology right, but also then when it's time to deploy it, you've got a willing and excited target to deploy into.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Dilip, do you have any thoughts here too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with what Tolga said. But the last one about involving the teams also leads to this great advantage. So I've seen companies who implement it not so great and deal with a lot of culture, backlash, issues, fear in the organization. The ones I've seen do this very successfully, they have these they actually face the issue of will it impact your job head on, right? Because we are all smart people. So if it's a billing and a billing individual is going to be impacted on the job, to say it will not impact the job, it's kind of it loosens the trust. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, in this specific example, the billing team was always behind, right? They're not catching up. They had so many exceptions. And what this company was able to do is to now same billing team is doing higher order work. They're actually talking to the vendors and customers and trying to figure out how to solve those exceptions and not deal with entering data from one side to other. So you have, in a way, upskilled this individual in your team. Not only you've upskilled them in the type of work they're doing, you've also upskilled them on how to work with AI, which is going to be critical skill in future. So literally, the in this specific example, the team went from oh my god, I won't have a job to oh my god, I'm able to grow in the organization, actually make more money, and in future I can now put on my resume that I have worked in an AI kind of hybrid environment, and suddenly they are more valuable to not only current organization but their own future path. If we lay it out that way, I think there's a great chance of adoption. The other area I think we talked a little bit about training to consider is that for business users, we need to educate them that AI is the first technology that is in our hands, where you don't need to learn AI to use AI, right? You're using AI literally in what we call natural language, right? We're just conversing with AI. So suddenly the idea that I have to learn algorithms and train models and have pipelines and all that jargon, they don't need to deal with that. They can just deal with the input output of it. And I'll give you a specific example. A manufacturing company, scheduling was taking 4 weeks for one individual, starting at 4 a.m. because the shift started early, all day long, 4 weeks to figure out what the schedule would look like. That went from 4 weeks to 4 hours of governance, where now AI is surfacing all the parts and quantities and schedules. And this individual is saying yes, no, yes, no. And if they say no, they have to, of course, inform why no. And now this agent is learning with every time they say no and why. And it's 4 hours have already gone to 2 hours. And this scheduling agent is now solving inventory problems. Same thing, they are outward focused with customers and other stakeholders. And actually, Lauren stopped me on the hallway at this company and said, told me like how thrilled she is and how she's telling her peers, even within an outside company, that fear has turned into excitement for her. And those are the things I think we can leverage to change the mindset and adopt faster.
That's great. It's similar to the with the cell phone and Google Maps. When you get comfortable with the fact that the phone knows where you are all the time, the map becomes very beneficial to you. You're not as afraid of it tracking you all over the place anymore. So it's a
Right.
similar kind of deal. Um, Now we've gone to setting up our structure, figuring out the strategies for implementing, getting people on board. now one of the most important factors in implementing agentic AI is doing it right with the right security and ethics and compliance around it. Dilip, how can organizations set up these safeguards early on without slowing down innovation? Because a lot of times we talked earlier about, governance typically slows things down internally. How can we help organizations do that more quickly?
I think the three layers to that, I think one layer we already covered, right? Like, hey, till you get really good at it, only pick the cases where you can manage things and the complexity and even the regulatory compliance is not too deep, right? So if you start there, then the chances of learning as you go how to govern it properly increase, right? Because you've taken lower risk, higher value use cases first. The second area is that a governance both from individual, like I just mentioned, the scheduling leader governing the scheduling AI agent. That is probably our most critical part of initial adoption. The third is you can have a committee that you can work with within your teams to say these are our general high level policies. But my favorite is they are actually AI agents who allow you to govern and do the same thing. Keep surfacing. These are the areas you're missing. So you can have this committee focus on these exceptions. And over time, you will build this knowledge of how to govern AI agents, and that will become the way you operate. And you don't have to put a lot of people on it. The wrong way to do it, which I've seen that happen many times as well, is you start with AI agents and then you hire 8 human agents to work with 2 AI agents. So instead of reducing cost, you end up adding ton of cost, and then you go to your CFO or financial people to say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's like you added headcount, you added cost. So governance part equally important that you have to do it right, but not by adding human agents, but maybe adding AI agents to govern and support the steering committee and the team members.
Yeah, interesting. So Tolga, AI can act independently. How do we make sure? Do you have any insights from your experience on how to make sure that it stays within those ethical and compliant boundaries?
Gosh, I think this is really similar to the earlier conversation about guardrails, right? So I think first of all, what are the hard boundaries? Like, what are we gonna limit the AI's ability to do? And when is it gonna actually be trained to not do anything at all? Like, hey, this is outside of my parameters. But also, what hard limits are our tools enforcing? I also think it's important to make sure we don't overly personify AI. I think Dilip said this earlier, like it's not as cognitive as a human. Like maybe someday, maybe we're headed that direction. But today it's a task executor. And so it's important to think of it in that way and essentially think about explaining um, how you want the task done to somebody who's never done that task and how would you give them the step-by-step instructions to do it. That's the kind of prompt thinking we have to have. Um, then again, similar to the guardrails, let's just make sure we're limiting the impact of mistakes. So whatever that impact might be, whether it's dollars or customer perception or something, let's make sure that we understand what things we can do that can be undone. I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah,
Make the mistake a way that we learn and improve, not create a crisis if a mistake is made. And then make sure it's all traceable. So make sure what the AI is doing is logged, auditable. What was the input? What did the AI decide to do? What did it do? What happened as a result? That should all be very transparently tracked so that we can learn, get better, and we can also understand when the AI made a mistake. So, um, at the end of the day, it's about drawing the box you want to constrain the AI in and making sure that that box is not leaky.
yeah. No, very good. Now we're getting close to the end of our questions. I want to give some time for the audience for Q&A, but I got one last topic for you guys, and this is about who can we trust to help us to, some of these companies, how everybody's claiming to do agentic AI in these days, but who can we trust? Love to have your insights on how you filter through some of the information out there on the web, the companies, the vendors, the partners, and the tech stacks that you would trust or recommend. How do we get rid of the shiny object syndrome and get to the right set of tools? for folks. Tolga, do you have any thoughts?
Man, this is something I'm really passionate about because there are a lot of early stage AI product companies that solve a very niche, very narrow use case, right? And they might solve it very elegantly. But most of those companies have not achieved escape velocity. So most of those guys are wrapping, whether it's OpenAI models or Anthropic models or Google models, which is fine. They're adding a layer of business intelligence to it and integrations to it, and they're saying, "Great, we've got like a niche AI product. It's super specific to a use case or to a vertical or to some capability." There's two problems with that. One, we don't yet know which of those have lasting power, and two, you get potentially embedded in an ecosystem that's very niche. And so what happens is you end up with 30 of those things, each of which is very niche. So here is how I would think about it. I think to a degree that's inevitable. And so rather than fighting against that, well, here's what I would suggest everyone does. Everyone should own the integration layer of their AI strategy. So where is all of this glued together? There's great sort of open source or commercial tools we can use to build this glue around. Um, but we want to have the data and the primary sort of execution engine behind our AI strategy on infrastructure that we ultimately can control somehow. It could be in the cloud, it could be a SaaS thing, but it's some sort of neutral layer that we could control and build against and is open, right? And then if we want to call out to specific like SaaS products that are wrapping some capability in AI, that's great. That's fantastic. Like we should do that. But if that product goes away, no worries. Like they're not the source of truth. They're not the ones that have our data locked up. They were just a tool we were using, and we'll take that tool out and we'll put another tool in, right? So there's a strategy here you could imagine that says, okay, we have to be really robust and thoughtful about our core, our integration layer, if you will, and our data. But then we can be a lot more experimental with the tools, models, specialized AI startups that we work with, because each of them is just one little leaf on our tree. And if we have to replace that leaf and grow a new leaf, we can do that pretty easily. So um, that is going to require some investment up front. That means you can't go to the easy button and just like dump your data into one of these platforms and be done. It means you're going to have to think a little bit more and maybe build a little bit of core architecture, but it will pay dividends in your flexibility and how fast you can adopt and move forward. I also think um, I would be cautious of any platform that says they do it all. So, hey, just um, hey, we are, not to be named CRM vendor X. We do AI. Just have us do all your AI work for you. I don't like that. I think we should have our data and our integrations in a place where they're open and we have full control, and then kind of separate out where we're doing the AI as a second layer. And then, of course, um, there's the whole sort of can it talk to our ecosystem? Like where can we put the stuff that it integrates naturally into our ecosystem? Where do our workflows run? How will these things get embedded in our workflows? There's these kind of other secondary questions. Will this thing scale? Those are all really important. But I think I would start with, hey, where is my core logic going to be? And then which tools am I going to call out to from there?
Got it. Got it. Dilip, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, a few thoughts. So I think it may start with who you are as a company today, what size you are at, right? So, because you can use tools, you can use solutions, you can use platforms, or you can use ecosystems, right? So, I'm with Tolga that the ecosystem solving everything is kind of a difficult proposition for most companies. It may work for some. If you choose a platform or a solution, they have to be open, right? Completely open architecture. You cannot get embedded with one platform or one solution where you are dependent on them for everything and innovation in every field. That clearly is not possible today. But you also have this opportunity to kind of take best of breed and connect different solutions and bring it together. But one thing common across whatever strategy you choose is you got to have a trusted partner, because two things are happening. One is the pace of innovation and change is so high. Like, can you really have 20, 30 people in your organization who wake up every morning and think about all that is possible and that has changed, right?
Right.
So an LLM that costs $100 today, tomorrow is costing 50 cents. Like, can you really embed yourself to that LLM versus others? and a trusted partner can keep track of it and help you think through and, of course, implement. And please understand, no trusted partner will have all the answers. So you have to be patient and work with your partner and build that capability together. The one other area to consider as you move forward is IP. I see most organizations miss out on this fact that all the vendors are learning and building their IP on your data. So if it is, let's say, billing, and the billing vendor is bringing you some knowledge because they've learned from others and to you, okay, that's great. But if it's a core system or a process that you have and how you approach it, that learning, that IP, you must not only contain the data, but you should also own the IP. That data should not be allowed to train the models of the vendor. And there's varying degrees of confusion here because if you look at the contract language, they're quite confusing. But I would recommend that this data and the knowledge hidden in the data for your core systems is your future asset. This asset may be more valuable than your whole company today. And it's hard to see it today, but it could be. So working where you maintain this IP and data control internally, as well as working with trusted partners, knowing kind of your size, mid-sized company should have a different strategy than a Fortune 500, of course. So those are a couple of incremental points to what Tolga already shared.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you both. I know we're getting close to the end here. Thank you both for your time today, your expertise, and walking through these great questions. This has been a great deep dive into agentic AI. If there's one message that I want everyone to take from our panelists today, the era of truly intelligent autonomous systems, it's no longer out in the distance. It's really, really coming at us very quickly. We've explored today how agentic AI promises to redefine productivity and innovation, but also acknowledge that there's a lot of challenges around the infrastructure, the integrity, societal impact, organizational impact, and the path forward will require collaboration across technology, business, and the policy to get it right. We encourage everyone here to consider today, how will agentic AI shape your future, shape your organization? And what steps are you going to take to prepare for and proactively shape that powerful future for your company and your employees? And before we get into questions, I want to follow Dilip's lead there in terms of a trusted partner looking for this. KMS is want to share everyone on the call today. KMS is offering a complimentary 2-hour ideation sprint for today's attendees. This will include a tailored session on identifying 3 to 5 use cases, like we talked about at the beginning, for agentic AI within your org. And then we'll summarize that into a documentation or into a document, and there'll be a discount to go with that if you decide KMS is a partner to help you to implement. So we'll send out more information. Yelena will send out more information after the webinar. But we'd love to support you if you have needs in this area. So Yelena, take it away with any Q&A you found.
Sure. Thanks, guys. This was so great, so interesting. You guys are all great speakers, so awesome to listen to you all. One came in, and Jeff, this might be for you because you actually mentioned the software development life cycle earlier, and any of you can chime in, but what are examples of how AI frameworks can be integrated specifically in the SDLC?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. So there's a variety of tools that are out there. Two that we're specifically playing with quite a lot is Cursor and Open Hands to help the developers with prompting for development and prompting for integrations and code suggestions. There's tools. One of the things we're working on is integrating from an agentic standpoint, the ability to take buggy code and generate automatically JIRA tickets based on incidents that we find, so that they get into the backlog, and then the backlog can be analyzed and prioritized and then assigned to developers to fix. So again, taking some of those concepts, and I think Tolga had mentioned the low-hanging fruit type of tasks that are just time consuming, and automating those to make sure that those get through the process faster. the last is obviously with test automation and a variety of tools out there today that can automatically generate manual test cases or automated test cases based off of manual scripts that are built to take a lot of time out of the creation of those scripts and then assessing best path of testing in your system based on user interfaces or user experience and implementing those in your systems as well. So those are just a few, and we could probably spend another hour or two talking about all the other possibilities.
Yeah, it's important to note, I think everything we talked about today was not about AI in the software dev process because I would say that that's like the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. It just writes code that developers look at anyway, right? And so all it does is make developers more productive. So highly recommend if anyone's not already doing that, start with anything as simple as GitHub Copilot. It's incredible, and it will make developers more efficient. The caution I'll put out there is that it will also it makes good developers better and faster and more efficient, and it makes bad developers worse. So it is not a replacement for having talented engineers on the team. What it is a way to make those talented engineers more productive.
Great point.
Yeah, I think Google's statement was 1/4 of all their coding is now through AI or AI agents. Um, when I look at investments into companies or portfolio companies that I have, if not half, if more than half, if at least quarter of that coding is not happening through agents, I think we're missing a great opportunity. And to Toga's point, you can put guardrails and make the developers so much better. They can do so much more than they could have done before. And it's a great training tool for young developers as well. So
Awesome. Great. Another one, and Dilip, I know you mentioned you talked to a lot of CEOs, CTOs, and trying to stray away, turning fear into excitement. But as a leader, as a CEO, CTO, CPO, this person said, I see that my team is almost fearful to adopt AI. How can a leader set a good example to recalibrate their team members away from the fear, aside from just open conversations? Or what have you seen that's successful?
I think two things that I touched on before as well is one is just being brutally honest here, right? So would it impact a job in certain cases? Yes, it would. But maybe it will make it better. It's not about it going away or the role going away. So there's a great possibility there. And then it depends on the culture of the organization, right? If you want to retrain and apply those resources in other cases, that's your decision. But I think being brutally honest is number one. Number two is letting the teams be hands-on in adoption to democratize this. So there are a lot of platforms, like, for example, the one I shared earlier, that's from Sutra.ai, is they allow everyone to come in with ideas of what they would like to do to improve their jobs or their function. So there's some buy-in and adoption, and you will find amazing ideas, even though they're not AI in lingo, but they're still in a very much structure that AI can use. So those two things are easy. Obviously, training is the third component. Like if you train your current team in basically simple prompt engineering, give them these tools to experiment things, and they become what I would call AI believers, suddenly the fear will turn into excitement. They will come with 16 other things they can do for organization that you may not have thought of. But that's a process. Brutally honest, give the tools and training, and on the 3, 6 months later, you will see a clear change.
Yeah, the training is a good piece. I like that. Um, all right, guys, we're right at time. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you guys for an awesome panel, very engaging. For the attendees, anyone who was on here, we will follow up with the recording and the offer. And if you have any questions that pop up, please let us know. Thank you, guys. Have a good
Thank
rest of
you.
your day. Bye.
Thank you.